Valerie Tyndall was born on August 29, 2005, in Indianapolis, Indiana. She grew up in a large, loving family that included her parents, a brother, and 4 sisters. At a certain point, they chose to leave the bustling city life and relocate to a small town named Arlington, situated about an hour's drive from Indianapolis. With a population of only a few hundred, Arlington offered a tranquil, safe, and peaceful environment. Valerie enrolled in the local school, made friends, and developed a fondness for the small-town lifestyle. As a teenager, she began taking on various part-time jobs to earn her first paycheck, initially working at local restaurants before securing a position with a lawn care company. This job suited her well, as it provided a flexible schedule that accommodated her school hours, and operating a lawnmower required minimal skills and effort. By 2023, at the age of 17, Valerie was diligently working to maintain good grades in hopes of gaining admission to a college to pursue her dream of becoming a veterinarian, a passion she had nurtured since childhood. During her summer break, she focused on researching colleges while continuing to mow lawns to save money for her future studies. On June 7, Valerie informed her parents that she was heading to work, said her goodbyes, and left home. Her mother anticipated her return a few hours later, but as the day progressed, it became evident that something was amiss. Valerie was unresponsive to her phone calls, prompting her mother to contact her employer. To her astonishment, Patrick, a neighbor and family friend, revealed that Valerie had neither shown up for work nor had a shift scheduled that day. This revelation heightened her parents' anxiety as they began to fear that something unfortunate may have occurred. Valerie's mother clung to the hope that her daughter had merely lied about going to work and had instead spent the day with friends, despite the fact that such behavior was uncharacteristic for her. Ultimately, they chose to wait, anticipating Valerie's return. They reached out to everyone she knew, but no one had seen her that day. By the following morning, with still no sign of Valerie, her parents felt compelled to contact the police. Upon discussing the situation with Valerie's parents, the police considered the possibility that she might have secretly gone somewhere or even run away. Valerie's mother noted that her daughter typically did not work on Wednesdays, but she had assumed Valerie had taken an extra shift that day. The officers then spoke with her employer, who confirmed that Valerie had no scheduled work that day and had last been seen on Tuesday. The police proceeded to question her friends and acquaintances, but none reported having seen Valerie or spending time with her. Given the small size of their town, the officers quickly interviewed everyone who might have been with Valerie, but this effort yielded no results. The only lead they uncovered was a witness who had seen Valerie driving by around noon on the day of her disappearance. However, this information did not bring them any closer to discovering her whereabouts. As days passed, without any indication of Valerie's return, the police grew increasingly convinced that she would not come home on her own. Investigators began to concentrate on 2 primary theories: that she had either run away or that foul play was involved. Valerie's parents were doubtful about the notion of her running away, as there were no apparent issues at home. Valerie had dedicated herself to her studies with the aspiration of becoming a veterinarian. Nevertheless, the possibility of her having run away provided her family with a faint hope that she was still alive and safe, as the alternative was far more distressing. For several weeks, law enforcement, along with Valerie's family and volunteers, conducted an exhaustive search throughout their town. Authorities also requested assistance from local residents in locating Valerie's vehicle. The absence of sightings of her car in the small community indicated that either Valerie had driven it out of Arlington herself or that someone had concealed it. Nearly 3 weeks later, on June 26, police discovered Valerie's car parked at an apartment complex in Shelbyville, approximately 20 miles from Arlington. The vehicle was missing its license plates, and the doors were locked. There were no indications of a struggle or any significant clues within the car. However, detectives soon uncovered a noteworthy detail. The apartment complex where the car was located was associated with the lawn care company where Valerie was employed. Despite this connection, Valerie's employer, Patrick, maintained that she was not scheduled to work that day. This raised suspicions among the investigators, prompting them to scrutinize Patrick more closely. After interviewing residents near the apartment complex, they identified another witness who had seen Valerie on the day of her disappearance. And, notably, she was not alone. Her boss, Patrick, was in the vehicle with her. Upon learning this, detectives returned to question Patrick, who continued to assert that he had not seen Valerie that day. However, when informed that a witness had placed him with her and that her car had been located, the situation became increasingly complicated. Patrick's account took a sudden turn when he acknowledged that he had indeed encountered Valerie that day. In his revised narrative, he stated that they met in Shelbyville, where Valerie requested a ride to a small town named Homer, located a few miles from Arlington. She expressed her intention to run away from home, claiming that someone would be waiting for her upon their arrival. Once they reached Homer, Valerie exited his vehicle and entered another car driven by an unidentified man, and they departed together. Patrick further mentioned that the following day, he retrieved Valerie's car and parked it at the apartment complex, where the police later discovered it. He maintained that his actions were solely intended to assist her. However, investigators quickly identified discrepancies in his account. They had already analyzed the location data from Valerie's phone, which indicated that it had last been active in Arlington, not in any other town. This raised suspicions that something may have occurred to her in Arlington, prompting them to confront Patrick with this evidence. To their astonishment, he altered his story once more, asserting that they had met near the apartment complex in Shelbyville, after which Valerie entered his car, and they drove to his residence. He claimed that he left Valerie alone at his home while he went to work, and upon his return, she was missing. Detectives found this version even less plausible than the previous ones. They requested Patrick to provide his phone, to which he consented. The detectives discovered text messages exchanged with Valerie on the day of her disappearance at 11:23 a.m. Valerie had sent a message indicating her imminent arrival, and several hours later, Patrick inquired about her whereabouts. He repeated this question shortly thereafter, yet received no reply. This sequence of events raised significant suspicions, leading the detectives to question Patrick's honesty. They opted to interview Valerie's parents to determine if they had observed any unusual behavior from Patrick. Valerie's mother revealed that Patrick occasionally exhibited odd conduct. He had developed a close friendship with Valerie, spending time with her outside of work, presenting her with gifts, and even accompanying her on shopping trips. At times, the 59-year-old man appeared to act more like a jealous boyfriend than an employer. Nevertheless, Valerie's mother did not regard these concerns with much seriousness, as Patrick was a family friend and Valerie was acquainted with his daughter, leading her to believe he was merely being supportive. However, one particular incident raised her suspicions. Patrick had invited Valerie to an aquarium in another city, and while her parents permitted her to go under the impression that he would be accompanied by his family, they later discovered that he had gone alone with Valerie, which they found quite peculiar. Additionally, Valerie's mother recounted that on the evening of June 7th, Patrick and his wife visited their home, during which he suggested that Valerie might have run away and could potentially never return. She also mentioned a curious detail that piqued the detective's interest. Patrick had been monitoring Valerie's phone location using a specific application, claiming it was for work-related reasons. However, the detectives quickly recognized the oddity of this situation. The application could be opened to track Valerie's location, raising questions about why he sent her multiple messages inquiring about her whereabouts on the day she went missing. After compiling all available information, the detectives grew increasingly convinced of Patrick's potential involvement in Valerie's disappearance. However, due to the lack of concrete evidence and uncertainty regarding Valerie's location, they were unable to formally charge him at that time. Nevertheless, the police opted to arrest Patrick for providing false statements, as he had violated the law by claiming he had not seen Valerie on the day she disappeared. He was officially charged, and the police contemplated their next steps. This decision was primarily motivated by the detectives' hope that Patrick might eventually reveal the truth following his arrest. Yet he maintained his innocence regarding any connection to her disappearance. The subsequent step involved obtaining a warrant to search Patrick's residence, but this process proved challenging in the absence of solid evidence. After several months, the police discovered another troubling detail. Several neighbors reported that Patrick had dismantled and burned his garage in the early hours of the morning, shortly after Valerie's disappearance. Ultimately, on October 11, the police secured a warrant and proceeded to search Patrick's property, which was situated on a large plot of land featuring a pond at its center. Initial searches indicated the presence of a scent resembling human remains emanating from the water, prompting investigators to concentrate their efforts there. However, no remains were located in the pond. Experts suggested that a body might be. At some point, individuals had been near the pond, which allowed the scent to permeate the water. Subsequently, the police broadened their search across the property and requested a helicopter equipped with ground-penetrating radar. Utilizing the data collected, they produced a map that indicated areas showing signs of excavation. Given the extensive size of the property, the search persisted for several weeks, concluding on November 28, when law enforcement concentrated their efforts on a substantial pile of construction debris intermingled with soil. Upon clearing this debris, they discovered 2 wooden crates hidden beneath. The first crate contained old VHS tapes and documents, the contents of which have not yet been disclosed by the police. In the second crate, they found human remains wrapped in black garbage bags. The level of decomposition rendered visual identification impossible. However, detectives observed that the nails of the deceased were painted the same color as Valerie's on the day of her disappearance. The remains were sent to medical examiners, who promptly confirmed that they belonged to Valerie Tyndall. Following this confirmation, Patrick was charged with her murder, and detectives brought him in for questioning. With Valerie's body located on his property, Patrick did not deny his involvement. However, his narrative once again raised significant doubts. He claimed that they met that day near the apartment complex in Shelbyville for work, after which they proceeded to his home, where his office was situated. Patrick alleged that Valerie began to blackmail him, insisting that she had been attempting to do so. The next day, he purchased wooden boards from a store and constructed 2 makeshift coffins, one for Valerie's body and the other for storing documents and old videotapes. He took additional measures to conceal the body by wrapping it in garbage bags and duct tape to mitigate the smell of decomposition. Patrick then chose to bury the coffins in a pit located on his property, utilizing construction debris as a cover and securing them beneath a layer of soil. The circumstances surrounding the burning of his garage remain ambiguous, as he set it ablaze shortly after the murder and in the dead of night, suggesting a possible attempt to eliminate evidence. Notably, the pit where Valerie was buried was a mere 100 yards from her parents' home, who had been searching for their daughter for nearly 6 months. When questioned by the police about his feelings following the murder, Patrick responded with an unsettling calmness, asserting that nothing in his life had fundamentally changed. The detectives, however, remained doubtful of his narrative, sensing that Patrick was attempting to manipulate the situation. Patrick portrayed himself as a victim, justifying his actions by alleging that he was being blackmailed. However, a more plausible scenario suggests that he had been attempting to win Valerie's affection for some time, hoping for a romantic relationship. On the day of the murder, it is possible that he invited her to his home with the intention of initiating an intimate encounter. When Valerie declined his advances, he panicked at the prospect of her informing her parents and made the fateful decision to kill her. Further casting doubt on Patrick's narrative was the testimony from Valerie's relatives, who noted her deep affection for her car, even stating that she wished to drive it for the rest of her life. This made Patrick's claim of being blackmailed for a new vehicle appear increasingly implausible. Following the charges against him, detectives discovered additional compelling evidence that strengthened the case against Patrick. A meticulous examination of his smartphone revealed that shortly after returning home on the day of the murder, he began deleting applications from his device. Notably, he neglected to erase his health app, which recorded a significant increase in his heart rate for several minutes after his arrival. Investigators believe this spike coincided with the moment he killed Valerie and subsequently moved her body. Moreover, Patrick confessed to disposing of the license plates and keys from Valerie's car by throwing them into a river, intending to hinder the police's ability to locate the vehicle. He also disclosed a disturbing detail. After strangling Valerie with his belt, he simply put it back on and continued to wear it, as if nothing had occurred. The victim's parents were heartbroken to discover that their neighbor and friend was responsible for their child's murder. They confessed that they had never genuinely believed Patrick could be involved, despite his peculiar behavior. It is crucial to mention that detectives had withheld much information from the parents to protect the integrity of the investigation, resulting in many details emerging only after Patrick's arrest. Once Patrick was incarcerated and assigned a lawyer, he did not attempt to withdraw his confession, which is often the case in such situations. Instead, he and his attorney negotiated a plea agreement in which Patrick would plead guilty to the murder, and in return, the charges of providing false information, which had initially led to his arrest, would be dismissed. As a result of this arrangement, Patrick appeared before the judge on March 11, 2024, just a few months post-arrest, and received a sentence of 57 years in prison. While the victim's family was spared the prolonged agony of a trial and the defense's efforts to rationalize Patrick's actions, the plea deal had a significant downside. Typically, such agreements do not mandate the guilty party to reveal all the specifics of their crime. Patrick was only required to acknowledge his guilt in the murder. Consequently, Valerie's parents may never uncover the true motivations behind the crime, even if the investigator's theory appears to be the most plausible. Patrick's family was equally horrified when law enforcement uncovered Valerie's body on their property. His wife and children, including a daughter who had been friends with the victim, had lived mere yards from her remains for nearly 6 months, completely oblivious to the situation. The plea deal also implies that we may never discover the contents of the tapes that Patrick buried in the second coffin alongside Valerie. It is conceivable that their contents could have led to further complications or even additional criminal charges, and Patrick may have been concerned that the police would search his residence following Valerie's disappearance. Please share your thoughts on this narrative in the comments section, and remember to click the like button.